Confraria dos Relógios, Brothers in Watches. Today we have Jason Wilbur from Wilbur Watch, and we have César Rovel, also from Brothers in Watches, and Jean-Marc Troyard, directly from a flight from Miami to Los Angeles. So we have a special guest that is many thousands of feet above the earth and is here as a very special guest. We don't have anyone at the space station at the moment, but probably in a new, in the next, interview.
Yeah.
So I'd like to ask, please, Jason, to introduce himself and his company to our readers and followers, and for people to know your collection.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, first of all, Carlos, Jean-Marc, everybody, it's wonderful to be sitting here with you guys. It's this is my favorite part. Besides making and creating the watches, is sitting down and talking to people that are passionate and have dreams about the same types of dreams I do. So it's wonderful to be talking to you guys, and thank you for having me today. Again, my name is Jason Wilbur. I'm the designer and also the founder of Wilbur Watch Co. This is a little bit of an illness for me, and so I make watches basically to try to as like basically therapy for me. This has been years in the making. My brand was officially started in 2019, but I had been having basically an entire decade of working toward that goal. And of course, as you guys know, once COVID hit, literally the day that COVID hit was the day that my first inventory came to my front door. And the day that COVID they locked down California and did things like that was the day that I was trying to send all my watches to retailers. So it's been a crazy ride, as you guys can imagine, the last couple of years with no foundation actually stable. And, I always like to say that if something doesn't hurt a little bit, it's probably not worth it. And this has definitely been a challenging ride the last few years. But, one thing I've been trying to do for a long time, because my background is really in industrial design. I'm not a traditional watchmaker. I come from automotive design. Specifically, I worked for companies such as Porsche and Honda. I was head of advanced design for Honda, which is basically a skunkworks program that I started for Honda several years ago. The idea was to create vehicles, alternative vehicles, everything from concept cars to concept motorcycles to alternative vehicles such as drones with people in them and all different types of things like that. And I've had a bunch of different startups as well that I've been involved in. Some of them I flew into mountains at 500 miles an hour, and that I learned a lot from, and some of them became fairly successful. So that is that I'm blessed for. But the watch thing, I've never been able to kick it. No matter how much I want it to go away, it keeps coming back in my dreams and waking me up at night. And I have a new idea all the time. And, everybody asks me, especially here in the US, it's kind of a little bit of an elusive topic, business, especially high-end watchmaking. People here think that there's two types of watches. It's Rolex or an Apple Watch. And besides that, you would tell them about brands like Grubel Forsey or Arnold and Son, and they have no idea what this is. So for me, I'm a little bit on an island. And one benefit that happens because of that is that I'm able to think freely. I'm not completely constrained by an industry that has a lot of standards and old school ways of thinking. So for me, it's about coming up with concepts and starting with a concept that I believe has a lot of personality, because to me, putting personality to machines there's nothing cooler than that. So it's why I kind of have this slogan that says dreams of machines, because these ideas come to me in the middle of the night. When you're in the middle of the night, it all happens to every man. When you're brooding in the middle of the night and you think you turned into a different person and you're thinking about your life and you're thinking about all these things, this is when these ideas come to me. And I'm able to take my designs from initial sketch all the way through to production because I do have this industrial design background and I have advanced R&D, experience. And because of that, I'm not using traditional watch making techniques to create my watches. I'm using advanced R&D, which would be things that you would be using to create future vehicles, architecture, things of that nature. And to me, everything I design is this big in my head. So I'm walking through it and I'm creating everything as a three-dimensional object that I imagine as almost a little model of the world. And that creates my space. So yeah, the brand is Wilbur Watch Co. I've got two different lines now. Basically, one that's very high end, that's movements that I'm creating myself. And the idea with that is to create a line that's always experimental, always pushing the limits of what's possible. And it's not a focus group company. We don't ask everybody what they want and then make watches like this. There's plenty of companies that do a brilliant job at that, and I'm not going to be one of them. So we have this high-end thing that's doing experimental watches, such as the Leo. And then I've got another line that I call daily drivers. And again, taking from the automotive spirit of things, the idea is to have a very high-end line of watches that's meant for collectors and people that really want to get into the brand on a high level. And then more daily drivers, which are I'm using modified movements that I modify off the shelf, and they're still very much three-dimensional, and they're very much take the same cues from my design language, but they're much more daily wear watches. And so this is the EXP for experimental. They come in multiple various versions and references. And then of course I've got the Leo line, which is my latest release, and see if you guys can see it.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes. Can you turn upside down?
Let me take the.
Yeah.
It's about the pioneering spirit. This is why I'm wearing my Wild West cowboy hat for you guys today.
Yeah.
It says dedicated to the pioneers, because it's, like I said, it's the idea is that instead of making a watch that we come up with an idea and then we refine it over years, the idea is to come up with an idea, make it extremely well, and then move on to the next idea. So one thing might be extremely popular. 2 years later, I might make something that people think is shit. That's okay. The idea here is to push out wonderful ideas and execute it in a perfect way. Also, I think that, coming from the US, I'm trying to build an empire here. I'm trying to resurrect the spirit of watchmaking from a US perspective, which I think is about taking risks and about that, like I said, about that pioneering spirit. So even though I have tons of respect for the rest of the industry, and none of this that I'm making is about being against it, it's just me creating my artwork, and that's what this is. So the brand is very much a spirited, youthful brand. But obviously what comes with that is sometimes people don't understand that we're really set up to as a serious company on the back end. I have after sales service in Europe. I have after sales service in the US. We have serious warranties. I have product in stock. We fulfill our product from both Switzerland and from Scottsdale, Arizona. And I make my watches, the EXP daily driver versions. I make these watches in the USA with Swiss movements, and we regulate in-house in the US and modify the movement in-house in the US. And we make the components for the EXP in the US, while the Leo is made 100% in Switzerland. So I don't stick with a formula. I do what's right for each product. And so hopefully I burned your ears out, and now you can tell me to shut up, please, so I can have some coffee, and then you can, any kind of questions or whatever, I'm happy to answer.
I know that César Rovel has some questions for you. And before he starts, I'm just curious to know, do you normally travel to Switzerland for these shows that, use it to be to have a lot of before COVID, and now are getting back. I mean, do you like to go to these shows and meet other designers as well? How frequently you go to these shows in
Well, I
Switzerland?
mean, because I'm in California, I haven't been able to go to Switzerland yet. I wanted to go to Watches and Wonders, but we launched the Leo officially at Couture in Vegas a couple weeks ago, and I was at Watch Time event in New York, where they also did the Worn and Wound event also in New York last year in October, November, whenever it was. I haven't been to Switzerland since I started the project. So everything's been online and talking to people over the phone. But I do plan on going to the shows. I mean, like I said, for me, aside from making the watches, is sitting with people like you guys who are passionate about this and talking about it and debating it and making a conversation, right? Because if the watches don't inspire conversation, then it's useless to me. So going to the shows, meeting other designers, meeting other people that are making things in the industry, that's super important for me. And so next year I plan on being at a lot more of the shows. I run the business, so I'm not only designing the watches, but I'm also managing the staff, and I'm also dealing with customs, and I'm dealing with manufacturing, and I'm dealing with all these different things. So as we're growing the company now and we're taking on other investors, I'm able to let other people do the jobs that I'm not that good at, so I can focus on really design and then communication and talking and reaching out to customers and reaching out to collectors and hanging out at the shows and just soaking up the inspiration.
Great.
So Jason, when creating a watch, what are your design inspirations?
It's funny. I think a lot of it comes from multiple things that I like to push together. So like when I say dreams of machines, it's very much like nothing's literal, right? So I'm never the guy to make something that looks exactly like a motorcycle or looks exactly like a car. I used to criticize that, when I was in school and people were designing cars, and we would say, let's make a car inspired by a shark, right? They would make like a car that looks like a shark. And to me, I find that kind of childish. So to me, I like to merge multiple ideas together. So for me, a lot of it comes from architecture. A lot of it comes from NASA and space type craft. A lot of it comes from, racing and engineering. So it's multiple things that come together, and then I try to kind of merge these ideas so that it really comes to be something that's my own. But for the Leo, for example, I think you guys seen how the jump hour actually works?
In the middle?
Yeah. Do you see how it?
In the center? Yeah. Wow.
Yes. So what happens is the middle hour, the cryptic symbols on both discs on both sides overlap in the middle to create the hour number. But what's interesting is these cryptic symbols, those were inspired by a story about aliens landing in the desert in the 60s in California, in I think it was in New Mexico, and they call it the Roswell incident. And it was basically like I think it was government propaganda to convince people aliens landed, but it was fun because what happened was that pieces of this they found out later it was a weather balloon, but what happened was there were pieces of this metal chunks that fell to the ground. And when they went out there and they found the crashed craft, right, they found these metal pieces that had these symbols on it that they said, this is alien writing, and everybody freaked out. So because I started thinking a lot about symbology, and I started thinking a lot about what numbers mean to us globally, and certain symbols that are universal from one culture, one country to the next, almost everybody recognizes numerals. Even you see Arab numerals, you see different numerals, like you see all these different numerals. Everybody knows what a Roman numeral is. And so what I wanted to do was create a series of a code of that's unrecognizable to anybody. and that when it comes together, it becomes something recognizable. And for me, this was like a kind of a thing that I really want to push more, you know, for in displaying time, is not taking, I don't like to take anything for granted. So the idea is to kind of make people think a little bit about how special the symbols are that are shared. So that was an inspiration, right? So there's a perfect example. Like I saw this incident in the desert with the spacecraft, and it was driving me crazy. And I thought about this forever. And then I started thinking about how I could interpret something like that into a timepiece. And everybody told me that it's crazy to spend several years making this kind of thing. So this is why I had to do it. But it's all very much modern things. I say that my brand is not about gold and diamonds. It's carbon fiber. It's NASA. It's ceramics. It's modern materials. It's experimenting with things that maybe typically only had like a performance value. And I'm trying to create an emotional value from things that typically don't have that. So it's bringing to life things that are materials that are used for functional things, and I think that's a really interesting R&D method.
Yeah, and it's very authentic because you were dealing with parts of the history and materials and things that you were dealing on a day-to-day, right? I mean, the sources are many things around you, as you mentioned, this story about the aliens. So it's very interesting because it's very authentic in everything, the materials, the ideas that you have and everything. So it's good because some people sometimes they use a old tradition that they are borrowing from someone else, so
Yeah.
it is important to be authentic these days, and it's very, very interesting. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think I always say this: we're not saving lives, we're not curing cancer, we're making toys. We're making toys for big boys and maybe little boys, but this is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be there should be an element. There should always be an element of beyond authenticity. I think it should be you should be exposed. I think that there should always be a level of uncomfort with what you make. I think that it's my responsibility as a creator to never be 100% comfortable with what I'm making. Because if I'm 100% comfortable with what I'm making, it now loses the whole purpose. I'm telling you guys I'm here taking risks. If I'm comfortable, then I'm not taking risks. So it's about kind of always finding a place that's a little uncomfortable. And that means that you might not hit the mark. It might not be a commercial success every time. But that's not the purpose. There's plenty of companies out there that have the formula to become a commercial success. But what I'm trying to do is be the forward scout for the industry, because I'm willing to take the shot. I'm willing to run up the hill first and see what happens. And so that's the idea.
Okay, can you tell us what are your partners for creating the movements and the modules for time education?
Yeah, so there's some people we have in-house, engineers that I have in-house that come from aerospace engineering. As you guys, I think, know already, I designed what became the Devon Tread 1 10 years ago. This watch was going to be the first Wilbur watch. But as you guys remember, 2009, 2008, 2009, last time the world fell apart. And everybody said my house is worth $4 and my 401k and my savings and everything is worth nothing. So I sold that watch to and that patent to Devon, so that we could realize that thing. And that was actually done by aerospace engineers here in California, because when I went to Switzerland with that watch, they laughed at me. And so the newest watch, the Leo. This watch, I worked with Concepto. I think you guys know about Concepto. Concepto is a phenomenal partner because I can design the watch the way I want to design the watch, and then they can help me with the technical aspects. And they're never telling me, you must make this watch simpler or you must make it not this way. because part of the reason why I loved working with aerospace engineers was because they don't know how to make a watch. And you know what's beautiful about that? They don't say, this is how you make a watch. They don't force you to do things a certain way. So this was beautiful for me. And so that's why I actually took a lot of lessons from working on those. And that's why I only work with suppliers that say yes to me. And if you're talking to the Swiss, there's not many times when they like to say yes. So
we know.
Yeah. So no, so working with Concepto, they're a beautiful group of people. They work efficiently. They're very much closer to. They work in a much closer fashion that I'm used to, like from automotive R&D, where you're being very efficient. You're moving fast on projects, because to me, taking 20 years to do a watch is not interesting to me. I want to do 20 watches in 20 years, not one. Because I need a living brand, something that's changing over time. I'll give you an example. Hang on a second. I'm going to show you this. This was my mission patch that I made for when we did the first Leo watch. And I want to show you, because this is how I start my projects. If you look at this is actually, if you look carefully, you'll be able to see the differences between this watch and what became the final version of this watch. And if you look carefully, you'll see that this is actually machined carbon fiber. You can see the lines. You can see that this is not an automatic.
Mm-hmm.
You can see that this is just a model. This doesn't function at all. This is a 3D printed strap. This is a machined aluminum case with carbon fiber. And all of these components are 3D printed and machined. And what this was like a concept car. This is the original idea that led to the final watch. Sorry, I'm trying to.
Okay. Oh, yeah, we can see. Yeah. Wow.
Okay, so it's very important to make a concept like this when you're trying to make an emotional product. And the reason why is because every time somebody tries to change something from the original idea, because of engineering feasibility, because of maintenance requirements, because of other material realities, you always want to point at this and say, is the emotional value still there? And if you're missing something, then you start over again. So I do this every time, and I have this thing sitting at the team's desk. They have one at Concepto like this sitting there, and we work on the concept. So I build this in CAD. I build these in 3D, and then I make a model, and it doesn't work, but I make this model so that we have always a reminder of what is the essence of the project and the watch. This way, we can make a commercial product that works really well, that's reliable, that meets all the standards that we need from a technical standpoint, but emotionally, it's lost nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key to my process.
And you mentioned Devon watch, right? You were before the designer of Devon watches too?
Well, so I designed the watch before it was Devon. I designed and engineered the watch and patented the watch in 2008 and 9. And I was looking for funding to start the original Wilbur brand, but it just became very crazy. And as you guys know, 2009 was a very crazy years, in the world economy. And so I sold the patent to Devon. So I sold it to them. They manufactured the watch. I think they went and did they did a second version with somebody else. They made a Star Wars or some other kinds of things. But the original one, the tread one, was a concept that I did here in California. And it was, obviously it was electronics. It was microprocessor running it with, stepper motors. And, I'll tell you, actually, if you guys want to hear, do you guys want to hear a crazy story about that?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the Devon watch, I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but it's big, very big. And
I introduced it to Devon, by Jean-Marc. Jean-Marc, can you hear us where you are? You can hear us? Yeah?
Yeah, he can hear us.
Yeah. So
yeah, he introduced. So I'll tell you a crazy story about what happened with that watch. So back in '80, but you have to remember that when I was starting to design this watch, it was basically like 2005 or so, and I didn't really have like the electronics and everything organized until about 2008, 2009. And I was right out of college. I had $200,000 in student loan debt, and I was putting money on a credit card. I was putting money on a credit card to try to make this watch, and I put like $60,000 on a credit card to make the first prototypes, and it was crazy. But what happened is that after we made the watch, it was criticized by a lot of people. They said, I'm going to tell you two fun stories about it. One was they said that it was going to be too big. It's way too big physically, and that no Asians and no women will ever buy it because they just have smaller wrists. And the best part about it is the first person to buy that watch was a teeny little Asian girl.
Wow.
And so I flew to Singapore and I handed her the first watch because I said, you were supposed to be the person that doesn't buy this watch, but you wanted it really badly, so we gave it to her. But what happens is that this is what the reality is with engineering. We used these little stepper motors to move the belts. And when you use these stepper motors, back then, stepper motors were used still for DVD players and for Sony disc players and things like that. And they were used for camera lenses for autofocus. And the only place they were made is in Japan. And so when I went and I had my company that I was working with, the aerospace company here, and we tried to order the little stepper motors, the company in Japan said, no, you guys make bombs. And I said, no, we don't. We don't make bombs. And they said, yes, it's a military contractor that is making this watch for, and I think that, and we don't sell parts to military contractor. I said, this is an aerospace company in California. We're making a watch here. We're not making any bombs. But they thought, no, you guys are making something crazy. And so if we're not selling them to you. So if you want, though, we have a supplier that has some old product that you can buy. And guess what? The motors were much bigger because they were much older. And that's why the Devon watch became so big, was because the supplier for the motors thought that we were making bombs. And I said, please just sell us the smaller motors. We're just making a watch, I promise. And they would not do it. And we tried to do it through funny channels and everything, and they still couldn't do it. So the motor itself is much more powerful than it needs to be, and they're much bigger. And so because of that, the watch went from like 42 millimeters or something to like 56.
Wow.
And massive. And I had nightmares about it because I was imagining like a bus on the wrist, just like an entire building on your wrist. And but it made a lot of presence, and it was a wonderful project for me because it really got me introduced into the industry. It got me introduced into the wonderful media and people that are interested in pushing the limits of design and trying new things. And wonderful collectors and wonderful people that have been amazing supporters. And it's been a crazy ride and so much fun. It's not as fun without the stories,
Yes, exactly. And that's when you met Jean-Marc, I believe. Because the first time I saw the watch, the Devon, was with Jean-Marc, right, Jean-Marc?
It was about mode.
Yeah. So first time I saw this watch that Jason Wilbur explaining, the Devon, was with you, I think, on your wrist.
He had it on his wrist. That's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and you guys can imagine, during COVID, I got to become very, very close with a lot of customers because I was forced to sell online. I was told you'll never sell luxury watches online. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody's going to trust to put the credit card online and everything. And I had a lot of people that were very supportive. And so what was really cool is I started to really connect. I connected with Jean-Marc again. I connected with a lot of people And it became a really cool community. So even though we were all like kind of locked in our homes and things, it was beautiful because, the connection in this industry, it just became very clear to me that there's a lot of beautiful people involved, and it's what makes all of this worth it,
Yeah. And
Nowadays,
as you mentioned,
you have retailers, or you selling only online?
No, we just started pushing into retailers now. I really only want to do about 15 retailers in the US total. So right now we went to Vegas to the Couture show to present the watches to retailers, and we had a great result. Part of the thing is my watches are so three-dimensional. People really do need to see them in person. And I'm interested in supporting the industry. So I'm not interested in selling online. I do it because I was forced to, but I really want to, we want to put our watches in retailers so people can enjoy them in person. And I think it's a better relationship with the customer. And I want to share the profits with our friends. So I think it's, I'm not interested in running a store. I want to continue making crazy watches and let other people that are better at selling do the selling. And, so yeah, we have a really good list of retailers we're talking to now, and we're going to start opening our first retailers in the next couple months. And, it's only the top. I can't mention based on the contracts. I can't really mention just yet who they are, but you guys can imagine we're only doing top retailers.
Great. And what are besides, I think obviously, I think that the US should be a very important market for you. Yeah. But besides the US, what are the other markets for your watches today?
Well, the interesting thing is selling online. I can see where they all go, right? Yeah. I don't know why, but there's a lot of people in France loving the watches. They love them in France and Italy. They love them in Germany. And I didn't expect that. Of course, Singapore and Japan is a big market. Japan, we were told, would be no market because the watches are big, but people like them anyway. Australia, we're selling watches in Australia, which is very interesting. But I thought the US would be the biggest market, but maybe the US is second to Europe right now.
Wow, interesting.
I think the US is slow to be leaders when it comes to fashion and it comes to new things. I think the US is a little bit followers when it comes down to watches. Still, I think there's a lot of collectors here, but it's such a big land. It's very difficult to reach all of them. It's almost easier to reach the customers in Europe and in Singapore and places that are smaller like that because the communities are closer physically. In the US, it's like you have to market to the whole entire country in order to find the hidden collectors that are in the middle of Louisiana somewhere, or in Idaho somewhere, or in Montana somewhere. And in the US, our biggest market is Florida. Our second biggest market is California, and then Texas and New York. And then it's spread out throughout the rest of the country. But I don't know why, but Florida, they love it. I think they understand a little bit more like the future thinking maybe, but it's interesting. It's an interesting play because we don't have. We actually have a couple collectors in Mexico that buy almost every watch we make, and we want to expand globally. I think the thing is that I believe that there's first adopters and leaders everywhere in the world, and those guys that really love to have a story on their wrist, it's for those guys.
I saw your watches at the show in Monaco with the Jean-Marc Declos from Watch Motion.
Yeah.
Do you do a lot of events with him, and do you like to make this putting together with like auto shows for instance?
Jean-Marc, he was I feel like one thing I like to do is support the underdog. When I see people making beautiful things and it's not exposed all the way, I like to help that person expose what they're doing. So for me, it's like that working with him was more about just giving him a cool watch to put inside his amazing watch winders so the world could see his watch winders. and less about trying to sell my watches. It's just supporting those people that I believe maybe need some more support, because I felt like that for decades, where I felt like by myself. And so with Jean-Marc's thing, that was just kind of beautiful coincidence. I saw him online. He speaks French. I don't. We started talking through Google Translate, and he was doing those beautiful watch winders. I thought, because obviously me coming from the automotive thing, I'm not going to do like a watch that takes racing stripes and puts them on the watch and says racing, like a lot of people do. I'm taking more the emotional aspect of what we're really talking about from a technical standpoint. Like if you look at the way that the chassis is inside the EXP, it's a very three-dimensional sub chassis, like you would see in a race car. If you look inside, it's very three-dimensional. You can see the three-dimensional chassis, the way everything is floating and held in space. This is very much like the way you would do like a mountain F1 motor. But instead of it looking like a car or putting race car graphics, I find that very literal and kind of childish. So to me, I think it needs to have a little more depth in the story.
Oh yeah, but do you think that you could be perhaps having watches from something like together with something else besides watches? Do you think about that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm constantly thinking about eyewear. I'm thinking about all different types of things that are product expansion in terms of like lifestyle things. But for me, I still have 10 more watches in my brain that I have to get it done before, because if I don't, I think I'm going to go crazy, because this stuff just starts piling up inside the brain and you got to get it out,
I see. Wow.
Jason, where are you based? You're based in LA?
I'm actually in San Diego. I was in LA for 20 years and now I live down in San Diego. So North County, San Diego.
Okay. So in the background you're seeing is your garage. Is this your headquarters?
This is my office. I turned the garage, of course, during COVID, like everybody. I turned the garage into the office, and then I never left. I like it in here. I pretend I'm Iron Man. I've got my screens, and I'm building everything in here, and it's cool. It's where I live now. It's quiet, so I can think, and I like it. Obviously, we're building the watches in Arizona, and part of that is just because the business climate in California is very difficult, especially for like a smaller company that's actually manufacturing things. It's something you have to balance very well. So doing this in Scottsdale, so we really kind of look at ourselves more of like a U.S. brand, not a California brand, just a U.S. brand in general. And obviously, like I said earlier, we work with so many different partners around the world that it's almost, in a way, it's like not so much like where it's not about being from a place. It's more just taking the essence and the spirit of it. Southern California, this is the birthplace of hot rods. This is the birthplace of speed. And, it's the Wild West. And I think I try to tap into that spirit with everything that I'm doing. So it's pretty cool. Obviously times have changed and it's a modern world now, but you can still feel it.
Nice.
Yeah, and do you have any requests from customers in Brazil, or have you ever sold to Brazil or Brazilian customers in the US? Just anything about that?
We've sold watches to people in South America. We got so good at shipping and we got so good at dealing with the direct to customer situation during COVID that now we do overnight shipping. We've sent things to, I think I've done like 4 or 5 different EXP watches to several different people in Brazil. We did and we do all different fully insured shipping to everywhere on earth. So obviously what happens is people come here, they meet friends, they see the watch on the wrist, and then they go back and then they email me and say, hey, I saw your watch somewhere. because again, my watches, my photos are terrible. And on the website, my photos are so bad that people, when they see the watches, they're like, hey man, your photos do not look as good as the watch. And I'm like, good. I want the watches to look better than the photos, you know, because it should be that way. But you know, we sell watches in crazy places. I sold watches in like northern Alaska, you know. So it's when you sell online, people are buying the watches from crazy places.
Oh yes, yes.
We sold we sold a watch to a guy in Patagonia.
Wow. Oh, interesting. Very interesting. So is it possible that you summarize the product line that you have today and more or less the price range as well for, you know, the people that are watching us?
So I'll show you, and you'll be able to see the size difference too. I've got what I call the launch edition, which was our entry-level watches. It's this here. It's a large watch. It's about 46 millimeters by 46, the bezel. And this actually has a Japanese NH35 movement in it. It says race fuel only on the back. I actually did that because I knew the purists would get kind of mad about me using a Japanese movement in it. So I knew that it would actually make some media noise. But if you look at it next to the EXP is much smaller. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the EXP is thinner. It's got a curved strap. So this is $2,700, and we limited them to 250 pieces. You can see them online at the website at wilburco.com. And we still have maybe about 15 of these left. Then we have the EXP line, which comes in everything from like these champagne colors, champagne gold, to more subtle gunmetal, and to you know, like a blue, blue colors. These are Swiss movements, like I mentioned. These start at $5,000 and go up to $7,500, depending on the combination of materials. Some of them are all steel, some of them are ceramic and titanium, and they're limited to 100 pieces each. Then the next line is the Leo, and the Leo is our jump hour with our in-house Wilbur Engine 1 movement. And we've got 3 different versions of the Leo now, all limited, very limited, 50 pieces, 25 pieces and such. And these start at $32,500. And as I mentioned, we ship these fully insured, you know, internationally. So we've got customers all over, and we ship directly from our fulfillment house in Scottsdale, and we have watches in stock. And, you know, obviously on the website, you can see what's available. But, you know, it's like I said, it's supposed to be a little bit of everything for everybody right now. The brand is going to start going upscale once we get, you know, the launch edition. These launch edition watches were really meant, they're launch edition. They were meant to kick off the brand. We're not planning on doing many of these because, you know, obviously it's very expensive to make these, and we wanted to make them attainable in the beginning, but now we're going to focus on EXP line and the Leo line. And so those 2, daily driver and then very high end.
Okay, great.
So the Leo watch is made in USA. Is module the time indication?
No, the Leo watch is 100% Swiss made.
Okay.
This is made by our partners in Switzerland, in La Chambre de France, and it is the Wilbur Engine 1 movement that I designed and then they manufacture. The EXP line and the launch edition line, both of these are made in USA.
Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And the design of these, you know, the jumping hour, so to speak, the movement also is of your design with Concepto, right?
Yeah, the movement is my design. Concepto just manufactures it.
Okay. Okay. Wow. Interesting.
What about the case? Where are they made?
The cases are made in Switzerland.
Switzerland.
So we make the case in Switzerland. All of the Leo cases are combinations of titanium and you know, sapphire front and back with anti-reflective coating, because of course with the with the amount of see-through nature of this, it's nice to have it with all the anti-reflective. So yeah, it's very hard to see in here, but there's really beautiful little facets and polished areas, just enough polish to really kick off give it a luxury feel while still being very technical.
Yeah. And all your watches are with automatic movements, right?
Yeah, so right now we have got all automatic movements.
Yeah, okay. With how long is the power reserve on them?
The power reserve, we say that it's 20 something hours, but now the more we've been using this watch, it's almost close to 35 hours. But obviously I play with this all day long, so we're still testing to find the exact number.
Okay, yeah, great. And César, you there? Yeah. You have other questions, or I would like him to say like special words for the Brazilians?
Well, I was wondering to ask about the straps. Do you have other options of straps besides rubber?
So right now we've got, for the EXP watches, we have ballistic nylon and leather strap options, and we also have leather options and ballistic nylon options for the launch edition. But for the Leo right now, we only have the silicone strap, but we've got it in multiple colors. We're working on another ballistic nylon one, but if you look at the way that the strap lines up, you can see how it lines up here. It actually snaps into place, and it's got a quick change mechanism. So it snaps into place so that it's very ergonomic. And when you do the leather, we need to make sure that we can have that same kind of ergonomic feel, because for a big watch, it's necessary to have it be extremely ergonomic so it fits well. So the rubber strap right now is a great option. Obviously, people do request other straps, so we're working on that now.
Talking about yourself, are you yourself a watch collector?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a ton of watches. It's funny because everybody thinks that I like really crazy stuff, but actually collect the stuff I like is really clean and simple. Like some of the things I've been recently looking at that I'm very much want is like that. What's it? The H. Moser, see, like the super clean dial. Oh, I love that with the red, and there's a blue and purple one that's just gorgeous. I have a lot of different watches. I have everything from like funky little Seikos to Bell & Rosses to Audemars Piguet. I've got my dad's Vacheron, old school Vacheron that's from my dad. And it's super simple and small. And, I've got just funky stuff. I have early Hamilton watches. I've got some, I've got a bunch of, what do you call it? Pocket, some early American pocket watches that are kind of gross. I need to get them like refurbished, but they're pretty cool. And it's like I collect a weird. If you saw my collection, you guys would think it's very weird.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have any collaboration with other type? I know not necessarily watch brands, but I mean with the other brands. Like many watch companies, they like to do these collabs with even other brands or influencers or artists or sports guys. Do you have any ambassadors or collaborators in our brand?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a couple NFL guys that are wearing the watches, and we've got that kind of traditional thing, and we're building up some more of that now in terms of having some ambassadors and things. But in terms of partnerships, I look at our company very much like Red Bull of the watch industry, where I want to create a brand that's very, very pure in the sense of what it is. I want the brand to be about the people. I want the brand that are in the company, and I want it to be about the customers. And I don't want to lean on partnerships with other brands in order to use their equity to justify our movement. So I really think that for me right now, it's about building the Wilbur brand and doing it in a very pure way. And maybe in several years, when I feel like there's a solid foundation, we might do some other types of partnerships with other brands. But right now, I think the idea is to is to really build it up in the most authentic way possible, which is to refrain from too much collaborations that might be viewed as just marketing things. So I right now, that's what my thinking is. You know, it's I'd much rather have the real customers be our ambassadors. I'd much rather have the people that work for the company be the ambassador than a celebrity because they have a big megaphone.
And when you know, if you have any, or when you have make some plans for going to South America for a tour of showing the watches, we as the, you know, brothers in watches, we can help you and welcome you here, and you know, present you to customers and retailers as well. This is part of what we do. We love to work with new innovative brands as your brand, and also to share these novelties and this, you know, different way of doing things that as you do to our, you know, to our readers and followers and so on. So feel free, if you have plans, you know, to come to Brazil, to come to Latin America, you'll be very welcome here.
Oh, thank you so much, Carlos. Yeah, I mean, one of my biggest heroes on earth is Senna. Ayrton Senna.
Oh wow! Yeah,
and it's, you know, coming from the automotive thing, it's like one of my biggest dreams is to go to Brazil and watch a Brazilian Grand Prix and go and see like where, you know, where this legend Senna was from, and like this is amazing to me. It's a beautiful. I have a lot of friends that are just dying to tell me about how beautiful it is there, and I've never been, so I would love to come visit Brazil and meet the wonderful people there.
Great, thank you.
Fantastic.
Yes, and César, you have any other words? I think Jean-Marc had to disconnect because he is landing in LA, I believe. But he was, you know, he was kind of silent, but he really enjoyed to be with us, and he sent me a message saying that I have to land, so I have to disconnect. But I would like here to thank Jean-Marc also that put us in contact, in touch in the first place, and looking forward for the opportunity, perhaps in the United States or in Europe, to meet with you and see the watches in person.
Yeah, well, I mean, just like you, your offer to me, you guys are welcome here in Southern California. I can show you guys the beach. I can show you the best places to do too much drinking. You know, it's you guys are always welcome here, and I thank you again for this wonderful conversation with you. Guys are awesome, and congrats on the new business you got going there, and thank you for, you know, supporting the crazy watch world. I really, it's guys like you that make all this stuff happen. Yeah,
I'd like to say thank you for accepting our invitation. It was a pleasure to meet you. I hope we can meet physically in the short term.
Yes.
Great. So thank you guys. Thank you
Beautiful
very much.
Guys. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful one.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Bye.